We appreciate it. Thanks everybody for being here this morning on Wednesday. I am not Pete Beck. Pete had something come up travel-wise and was unable to be here this morning. So I'm Jason Grooms. I am the Vice President of Strategy and Development for 49 Degrees. I've been with the company going on 3 years now. Previously spent 25 years working in college football as a coach and administrator various places, Ohio University, Vanderbilt, University of Texas for my roles in administration at those stops. So I've been with the company now. I was a client for 16 years, so I do have a unique perspective on being on the other side of the fence and dealing with a vendor and the relationships that are built there and the importance of branding a facility from the point of the administrator and coaching staff. So we're excited today to have this panel discussion today. I have a colleague of mine, Josh Hilgefort, here with us, and he'll introduce himself.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Josh Hilgefort, 49 Degrees. Been a client advisor now for probably 4 or 5 years. Before that, I was a project manager, also at 49 Degrees. So been with the organization now for 13 years. Like I said, a couple different capacities during that time. Learned a lot. Now I'm out traveling on the road, typically every week, visiting with clients. On the front end of their projects, trying to understand what their vision is for their facilities, bring that information back to our team, make that a reality. So I got my start in college athletics, I guess I would say. Went to Ohio State, worked with the women's basketball program there as a manager. Learned a lot about the ins and outs of college athletics that way. And then graduated and went straight to 49. So excited to talk to you guys today. Look forward to it.
Appreciate it, Josh. And then here to my immediate left, we have a good friend of ours and a client, Travis Boomer. Travis is with Texas State Athletics, where he's the Executive Senior Associate Athletics Director for Development and Administration. So he's not the facilities manager, the game ops guy, but he was our main point of contact through this process on this facility that we did. So Travis oversees all fundraising initiatives, which include capital campaigns and comprehensive major gift program. He's also the sport administrator for football, track and field, cross country, and has oversight of the strength and conditioning program. Travis has had stops at New Mexico, also South Florida, and Tulane in his career. The three of us are all natives of Ohio. Travis played football at the University of Findlay, where he's team captain as well. So Travis has seen a lot of change over his time at Texas State. There's probably not a lot of folks in the room, or really that you may come in contact with, that have been a part of 4 different conferences at the same university. Okay, so Travis has seen it all in his time at San Marcos, and we're excited to have Travis here today. So appreciate you, Travis.
Thanks for having me.
So the goal of this session today, as we're going to discuss, is the importance of bringing in a dedicated branding partner and how it matters through the process when you're either going through a refresh or a new build. This one specifically is a new build process that Texas State underwent in the last year, and the importance of how it can affect the project negatively or positively during the timing of a branding partner being brought in. So obviously 49 Degrees is an advocate of the early part of the process. As soon as we can get in the door and be a part of that and be a consultative part of it, we feel that the project was a lot more smoother, and it's a little more of a welcoming environment for all. So we're going to talk about Texas State's facility and evolution as they made this conference realignment here recently to the Pac-12. So they've had a lot of growth. We've talked about that briefly here. So they hired Coach Kenny here in 2022, right at the start of the new NIL era. Conference realignment was in discussion for them. They made the jump to the Pac-12 from the Sun Belt Conference here recently. And in that time, they decided they needed to expand their building to accommodate their recruiting efforts, to move to the Pac-12 and what they were doing from an initiative and fundraising. So we're going to talk a little bit about why facilities still matter in recruiting and retention and the culture of their athletic department. So as we kick it off here, the first question for you, Travis, is when Texas State made a decision on expansion, what did success look like beyond just adding square footage in your space?
Yeah, I would say for us, success meant getting the project built on time, which was a 2-year project, and also getting it under budget. So those are probably 2 main objectives. I would say the third would be, student athlete focused, and to make sure we work with our student athletes pre-construction, during construction, and post-construction to get what they need to be successful. I think for me, one of the biggest pieces of that is during construction. This was a $40 million project, and a lot of this happened over the course of 2 seasons. So it was a construction zone, and they were also out there trying to lift weights, recover, do the things they need to do to get better with football games. Coach Kenny's first couple of years. So we felt like that went pretty well. And finally, it was a piece that we needed to brand this facility. Typically, when we go and renovate facilities or build facilities, one of the last things that we choose not to do because of money is the branding. But we felt like this project specifically, that we needed to make this look like where we want to go, where our ambition is moving forward. This was a $40 million project. It had new hydrotherapy space, new training room. Our weight room grew from 4,500 square feet to 9,000 square feet. Meeting room space. We added new meeting room spaces, new unit spaces. There were some coaches, position groups, quarterbacks, tight ends, running backs. They were actually having their meetings in their coaches' offices because of lack of meeting room space. So that was important to us. There was a hydrotherapy component to this. Before this new hydrotherapy space, there were in big blue tubs with a bunch of ice and water outside. So, that's been very helpful. And the final piece to this would be the hospitality type space. It's a space where we've added a couple of hospitality areas that can accommodate, roughly 1,000 people on game day that would generate dollars during the course of the year for that. And finally, it's bringing 49 degrees. And we worked with 49 degrees since 2016. They've been great partners of ours. I've gotten to know Jason over the last handful of years, and we knew that they could deliver what we needed them to deliver. And that they worked tirelessly to get there. Customer service is top of mind. So we brought them in to help us procure this and build something that we're proud of, and our student athletes are proud of, that we can turn this into a recruiting piece when we're bringing these kids in from around the state. So we felt like this is something that's a point of pride, and our student athletes and our coaches can relate to this project, and it makes them more efficient throughout the course of their workday and work week.
Yeah, I live in Texas, so live remote, but I spent a lot of time going down to meet with Travis when the project was starting to get kicked off and kind of learning more about what they have. And not only did they refurbish and move some things, but they took a pretty large footprint. You talked about the weight room specifically. It was attached to the end zone facility, but you put it in a pretty unique space. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so a couple of things. We had, which made this project a little more complex. So we couldn't get out of the current weight room until we got into the new weight room. We couldn't get out of the current training room space until we got into the new training room space. So, that was unique itself. The new weight room is actually 12 feet from the end line to the back of that building where the weight room used to be. So we had to completely, and we had some bumps along the way in terms of a delay with the construction, but we had to evacuate both those spaces before we could demo the existing spaces.
Yeah, so it created a new footprint. There was a lot going on. Travis and I had a lot of conversations. He mentioned the delay. I kept checking in on where we were at, and I tilted the head a little bit to the side, saying we're not quite there. So, but they moved that weight room right to the end cap of the football field footprint, changed that whole dynamic, the way their stadium looks from the field level, from a fan perspective. So, you mentioned all the spaces with the weight room, the hydrotherapy, the player spaces. Into this discussion, the importance to use storytelling and how to really accentuate what Texas State's story was and how it's grown. What are some of the things and the focuses that
Well, I think it's, part of it is, well, let me take a step back. Our previous phase, there was a lot of air balls. There wasn't a lot of culture building pieces. There wasn't a lot of history of the program. So our walls were pretty buried, and we felt like that's something that needed to change moving into this renovation. But, I think some of the things that were important, is retention and recruitment of student athletes. I think it's important retention and recruiting of coaches, support staff administrators. I think that's very important that they walk into a space that they feel comfortable. They're proud of it. They can show it off when they bring 18-year-old kids and their mom and dads in from Dallas. So I felt like that was really important. Again, working with our strength and conditioning coach, he's got certain sayings that's kind of built around our team culture that we put around the building. Not much of it, but there's a couple spots that we wanted to, kind of talk about what Coach Kenny and Coach Youth talk about, every single day of every single week. So that's important for us to build on, the culture of the football program.
Absolutely. At what point during the project did you feel where the conversation even moved from the architect, the immediate team, to a branding partner?
Well, I would say that was, right at the start of it. Unfortunately, that really never happened. It really took us probably 14 months to get to, real conversation about what, the graphics, the branding, what that looks like, the storytelling in this new renovated facility. So it was probably 6 months from the completion of the building. We started getting serious about it and talked to 49 Degrees about, can you still get this done? And it wasn't until June of that year, June of last year, that we actually contracted with 49 Degrees and brought them on board with the hope of having a grand opening at the end of August. So that, as you can see, that's a fast timeline for us to fast track this project in order to get it completed. But I knew, coming from the fundraiser, I knew that if we have a grand opening and the walls are bare, I'm going to have some donors that aren't happy. So we started working with Josh and Jason, and started working with coaches. Our head coach, Coach Kenny, was really involved. I would encourage everybody to, include the coaches that they can help, make some of these decisions, drive some of these decisions. Visit with our chief of staff, of course, our marketing branding folks on campus as well. And we started to come up with a plan. We started to come up with the design of what things could look like. And that's kind of where we spent a lot of time going back and forth with pictures. Spent a lot of time talking about here are some of our culture goals and what's important to Coach Kenny, as well as our student athletes. There was some, historical pieces in there. Coach Kenny the last 3 years got 3 consecutive bowl games, won 3 consecutive bowl games. So we're at a point in our evolution of the football program that's the first time we've ever done that. And, it's something that we're very proud of, and we need this to be part of this process. So anyhow, fast forward, 2-3 months, and a lot of back and forth, and we get to the end of August, and I don't know if you remember, but for some reason we missed that date. And it wasn't on them, it was on us. And so we pushed it back to a bye week at the end of September. And at that point, everything was good to go. Everything we wanted to do was done. In fact, there were some things we didn't plan on doing that we did. So we had to increase the budget and do more to make it look like the space we wanted to. So the grand opening went off without a hitch. Donors were excited about it. It was fun to kind of see, the money they spent on this project, for them to come in and look and smile, and they were proud they invested in.
We have no problem when you add to the budget. So when we got home there, Travis alluded to it was a tight timeline. We were standing here at NACA last year when we got the phone call from Texas State asking, could we do the project and could we hit an August timeline? Now, it's a tighter timeline than we would like to do for our footprint that size, but we knew that with collaboration and a sense of urgency that we could get to that point. But during the process, we realized, and with the activity, and we highly encouraged the coaches' involvement because they were going to have to stamp on the program. So, things got slowed down a little bit. We had summer vacation, we had some travel involved there, camps, and things were pulled. So we moved the timeline. It worked out great. It was a fun grand opening, and they were gracious enough to include us, invited to that. So to see the kids' reaction, to see the donors' reaction, the alums, there's a big sense of pride in that community to see what they had done there for football. So so it took a little time, but we got there, and it's a great project. You can see some photos up there that are kind of rolling. But next question I'll have for Josh. Josh, for those in the audience who may not be familiar with 49's process, once Texas State brought our team into the project, what did that process look like on your side to elevate the experience and align the vision of the program and ultimately deliver something Texas State felt proud and confident and that they made the right decision to bring us on?
Yes, I think from a design standpoint, 49's process, typically starts with the discovery phase. And what that entails is different on every project. It could be, we need to go on site, on campus, take a look at what they have currently, understand truly what they have in the space, what they're looking to have in the space. We're doing a lot through social media and looking online, trying to understand who they are as a brand, knowing that in this case, a lot of the brand was changing and some of the storylines were changing, and Travis hit on that a little bit, what we're trying to, tell in the space. So, just real quick, by a show of hands, how many people in this room are actively engaged in branding and graphics projects on their campus? Quite a few. So, obviously, from our standpoint, we have a design process. We feel like it works pretty well. And what that is, starting by, it feels like sometimes it starts a little slow with that discovery process, trying to figure out what the storylines are going to be, where we're going to put them. That kind of bleeds into the programming phase, which then, we try to look at the floor plans, understand the flow of what the facility is going to be and how it's going to function. That's super important to us. Obviously, a floor plan can tell you only so much, but it's really having those conversations with Travis and those stakeholders and knowing, which corridors need to have storylines, where there's going to be high traffic parts in certain areas, so we know not to put product down there that's going to get damaged easily. Those are all small conversations, but at the end of the day, they can be problematic down the road if you don't take them into account early in the process. Because once we get to the next phase, which is schematic design, which is really when you start to see a lot of the cool concepts, we want to make sure that our approach makes sense. So when we design something in that space, we're not going to take that design and filter it to a different area. So really trying to hone in on what goes where in the space. Once we have that kind of dialed in through the schematic design, there's really just that kind of ping pong effect, back and forth conversations of the design development. Obviously, in this case, we had a few stakeholders that kind of joined us through the process. Donors, the president was involved at one point, trying to understand some graphics and what he truly wanted in the space. So, one recommendation, just as you go through that design process, understand who all those stakeholders are, who's going to be involved in making that final decision. Try to get them involved early, like we talked about with the coaches. Even the facilities team, obviously very important. They're the end user, right, of the space, and they truly know how the space is going to function. So, critical to get their input throughout that process. And then, once we get to a final concept, obviously 49 Degrees is a little bit unique because we fabricate and install everything internally as well. So really a one-stop shop. So the design takes place, our team fabricates internally. I'd say we probably fabricate 85 to 90% of our product internally. There's a few items that we would outsource. So really that allows us to control a lot of the flow throughout fabrication and installation. So the trucks are loaded and our install guys are leaving on Monday, traveling down, driving all the way to Texas, installing 12, 14-hour days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, sometimes staying the weekends, obviously working towards whatever that critical date is that we're trying to achieve. So from a design process, that's kind of, where we start with the discovery all the way through installation.
Can you talk a little bit about how your team is structured as well?
Yeah, so it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, we restructured the organization into teams. So myself as a client advisor, a project manager that works internally that handles a lot of the communication with our fabrication team and our suppliers, our material suppliers. And then also a team of designers. So there's 5 designers on our team that work on all projects together. And what that does is, it gives Travis a point of contact, which is myself, but it also gives him a team on the back end that's very familiar with the brand, from a design standpoint, familiar with the facility, from a project management standpoint. And what that does over time as the projects continue, right? More projects come down the road.
We hope so.
So what that does is gives us a familiarity with the campus, and it just gets more and more seamless throughout the next couple projects. So we organized ourselves in that way, so the client can get familiar with us and they can get comfortable with who they're working with. We've heard it from clients in the past that that have come to us for the first time saying we've worked with other firms that we never know who the designer's going to be. We don't know who's going to be on the phone calls. They get frustrated in that sense, so we want to give some consistency to our clients throughout this branding process.
Yeah, and even from my perspective, where I was on the other side and had to work with other branding partners in other roles I've had, I deeply appreciated how 49 works because you get that continuity, and continuity builds trust, and trust long-term, the communication flows a little more freely and how we work together, and we get to know you, and it's a very relational side of how we operate. So we can call Travis can call us, we text, whatever it might be, and we can pick up the phone and have dialogue versus it being put in the queue, spun around, and then that team might get it or that designer might get it. So we feel it's very efficient the way we operate to do it that way. Josh handles the Texas state account, a lot of the accounts regionally in the state of Texas as well, but it brings a lot of value to how we operate. So talk a little bit about operational impact and the athlete experience in our our next segment here, Travis. Now that you've been in the building 9 months, 10 months, where we're landing out here, what changes have you seen in the day-to-day operations of the athlete experience and recruiting since moving into the facility?
Yeah, I would say it's made us more efficient, both from a student athlete perspective, a support staff coach perspective. If you go back 2 years ago, our student athletes aren't spending as much time in that building as they are today. It's a one-stop shop. They can go to the training table, they can go to hydrotherapy, get their treatment, they can go to the recovery room, they can hang out in the players' lounge, meeting spaces right there now. So it's really made us more efficient and effective because everything is right there. And that's one of the things that I think every coach would say is we want our student athletes to spend as much time as they can around their teammates and the coaches, to bring them together as a team. So that's the one thing I probably noticed the most. Secondly is probably recruiting. This space used to be a place that we had recruits in a couple years ago that we wouldn't stop in the team meeting room spaces. We wouldn't stop in the unit spaces. We would go by the hydrotherapy space. Now those are spaces that we open the door, we go in and show them where they're going to spend time with their unit, breaking down film, to show them where the cold tub, the hot tub, the treadmill is, where they can go in and get therapy and their recovery. So I think it's been the highlight for me is seeing these kids that I see every day when I walk in there, going down one hallway, going down a different hallway, hanging out in the training room, which it's been great. I think the coach would say that this is something that makes a lot of sense and he feels really good about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they want to keep the kids tight, right? They want to build camaraderie, and those spaces can help do that.
And let me say one more thing. So our previous weight room, our strength and conditioning coach, again, this goes back to efficiency. Our strength and conditioning coach had to run 4 groups throughout the course of that weight room, which was probably 5 hours of his day, maybe 6 hours of his day. Now he can do that in 2 work groups. So it gives him more time to do other things, to prepare for the next day, which, that's something that is probably another big benefit of this renovation is more efficiency with what a weight room looks like and feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely can control your day. So, from your chair, working in the capital fundraising and working with donors, how has that building changed your role working with the donor group and alums?
Say it again.
How in your role fundraising has that changed your conversations with donors and alums as you bring them through tour the building and the other spaces that are used, not just football spaces?
Well, I would say, from a hospitality standpoint, there's 3 different floors. There's a patio over top the weight room. There's a penthouse that holds 100 people, and there's a space that was always there, but it's been renovated, it's been rebranded, that holds 250 people on game day. So, that from a financial standpoint has helped increase our revenue. I would say walking people through that space specifically, it's allowed them to see things that maybe haven't been done. This is probably the most well-funded privately project we've ever done, we've ever completed. The $40 million, we raised about $25 million of that, and I think it's proof is in the pudding that yes, we can do stuff like this, and if we're going to move to the Pac-12, then these are things that we need to do, whether it's building a field house, a new training table, a baseball, softball project. Those are all things that are coming down the pipeline, academic center, but this kind of gives people, a little bit of vision of, hey, what's possible if we have some private gifts that come in.
How is the storytelling that we did and work with you on those other donor spaces a little bit different than we have these spaces?
I would say it's probably a little more generic, with the exception of the penthouse, which is what this donor wanted. She wanted what they delivered. But I would say the general spaces is more generic. It's really not student athlete centered, it's more donor centered. I would say this, specifically on the patio, we've had, photo, what do you call it? Photo pictures with recruits. They set things up out on the patio, a different, typed look. We've had College of Business meetings in the penthouse. We've had Regent meetings in the penthouse. We've had other campus meetings in the penthouse. We've had recruits' mom and dads up there for dinner on Friday night or Thursday night. So it's turned into a place that's used by the campus folks, by our football team, by athletics folks. So it turned into a good piece for us to use.
For sure. Josh, in your experience, and you've done a lot of this, you've been a part of them, we talked about spaces that are used for donors and other entities that are not athletic based, timeless, evergreen. Talk about the value of that, how those are being talked about and used in these areas.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, a lot of those spaces are being used for, very different events, right? Like you're trying to make these spaces multifunctional. So from a branding standpoint, we're always trying to be, evergreen, trying to really play off of the architecture, which kind of goes back to the fact that we always like to be involved earlier in the process. So we want to make sure that what we're doing from a graphics and branding standpoint feels like an extension of what the architecture is. We don't want to come in and, do something that contrasts very drastically what the architects had as their vision initially. So we want to play nice in that regard. Obviously, we're here to push the envelope from a branding standpoint too, though. So we will at times, give suggestions on things that we think, could elevate the space. But again, that needs to be a collaborative conversation with the end user, with the architects, with the contractors to see, what's feasible and what's realistic.
Yeah, and for us, there's things that aren't going to change for you guys. Your collars, your brand, your marks usually don't change a whole lot. There might be an adjustment, but players change. We live in an NIL area where putting player photos up may not add a lot of value to your facility when you have to take them down maybe in a few short months. Right? You want to have things that are going to stay on the wall a little bit longer. You want to get your most bang for your buck there. And there's also materiality that we can work through where we did a lot of SEG graphics, which were like the fabric frame type graphics where they can have a little longer lifespan where you can put them up and things change. We can pull it out of the frame and put a new one up versus putting vinyl glue to the wall there's a lot of things that go into that to add a lot of value to those spaces. So,
Yeah, I think too, that goes back to, when I talked a little bit about our process, that programming phase. It's important too, as much as you're programming the storylines and the messaging throughout the space, you also want to program, what displays are going to be evergreen, which displays are going to need to be updated. You want to try to find a nice balance between, needing to update everything every year from a cost standpoint and just, a time standpoint. So it's important to think through that and just make sure, you have the spots. It's important to keep displays refreshed, but you want to ensure that you're not having to go back every year and update every single wall. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we know that the graphics and branding are just a small part of what these coaches are working for every day, right? So they have teams that they need to put on the field, they have other priorities, so we try to make that as easy as we can for them, cost effective.
for sure. You've talked about working with the strategic partners on campus. You alluded to donor activity, donor involvement. I think we probably should bring that up a little bit. You had two pretty unique folks that were involved in this project that joined us on the walkthrough. They were a part of it. They were picking out materiality. You want to talk a little bit about Miss Natalie and Mr. Bo?
Sure. Yeah, we have a donor that he lives an hour away. He's super involved in our football team, and 4 or 5 days a week he drives to football practice or drives to watch them work out, and he'll stay there until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then he'll drive back home, and that happens 4 or 5 days a week. So he is super involved. It was just by dumb luck that he was there when you were there, and as we walk the space, we have another donor, super involved, super thoughtful, very creative. They have their own thoughts and ideas, and honestly, some of these things that we did, afterhand, it was her idea, because there was a couple hallways that didn't have anything on there, and she was questioning me about those hallways, and can we put something in there? And it was a great idea. It certainly makes those hallways a lot nicer. Is it SEG? So we use those fabric frames. We're actually in the process of ordering a couple more from our last bowl win, which again, to Jason's point, you don't have to peel off the vinyl. You can just put a new frame up there and it's good to go. So, but they were very, opinionated on seeing certain things, including, and I think this is kind of my final thoughts, but down to construction and letting donors give them the knowledge of what tiles going in here, what tiles going in there, what's this carpet look like, because we had to go in the back end and change things, and she paid for those, and she has a great eye for stuff like that, because it really sharpened that place up, including the graphics. We had gold tile everywhere, so maroon tile. So I guess a recommendation for the folks in here that deal with donors, if there are any in here, let the donors in on the front end. Let them kind of see what what we're thinking, so you don't have to redo part of the space just because it looks pretty bland and just okay.
Yeah, my dumb luck was a great day on that walkthrough with Bo. Bo works rodeo, did a lot of rodeo work, and he showed up, and we would talk about something. He was kind of giving me a nudge. He goes, "Hey, we're going to do that. Add that to the budget." And that was a great conversation to do with the donor, and he kept telling me to spend their money. So it was a unique experience, and then Miss Natalie was great to meet her and her involvement. She has a nice taste for gold, right? So we did a lot of gold trim on some things, and added some door protected corners instead of being silver. And it was a great idea. A lot of times those probably might have been overlooked by a group of guys, but adding that gold trim really brought out the branding of Texas State billboards. As we move into segment 4 here, lessons learned from facility leaders. Travis, for the facility leaders in the room here today, what did you learn about the value of having a dedicated branding partner involved alongside the broader project team?
Well, what I would say is, for lesson learned, I would bring your branding partner in on the front end. obviously we were too late. It worked out, but we were too late. You know, it makes more sense for me to bring this branding partner in, you know, on the design phase with your campus facility folks, the athletics facility folks, the architect, and then also, you know, what could be their impact and vision when it comes to the programming phase. I think there's some things that, you know, looking back on it, if we had a longer runway, if we gave 49 degrees, you know, 14, 16 months in order to come up with some concepts, it may change, it may be the same, but I think it will give us more time to be thoughtful and actually think about exactly how we want to lay this stuff out and what makes the most sense. So I would encourage you guys to you know, to bring your branding partner in early instead of late.
Josh, you want to talk a little about that as well?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think this project turned out great. It's very clean, contemporary. I wouldn't say that we really pushed the envelope too much from a build standpoint. There weren't any displays that were super complex. Typically, those are the displays that do end up having a lot of impact. But like you said, with the runway we had, you know, it was, you know, let's get the design package in place. We need to get this moving. We probably made decisions faster than, you know, we would have liked, but that was the timeline that we were up against. So, 100% agree with trying to get someone on board sooner than later.
Yeah, and it's awkward for us. You know, you guys have been working through a project with an architect for who knows how many months, and then on some random day on a Zoom call or a Teams call, a branding partner's introduced after they've been doing all this work, and we're supposed to be, you know, lockstep from that point forward and working to get this project done. So we feel that it's a lot more, you know, quote unquote kumbaya when we start off early with everybody. We're on the same page. The communication is better. We understand what they're doing. Understand what we're doing. We're not trying to step on anybody's toes. But when we are able to come in early in the process, and there might be something that has a bigger build out that needs to be developed, like a lit backdrop or some type of dimensional thing to be mounted to the wall, and might require an electrical component. You know, we can work with the general contractor and the architect to have an electrical pole already built into the wall versus us punching a hole in drywall and feeding it through the ceiling and you know, adding it after the fact. So that can become a little more seamless that way and make it a way more functional project. So you know, we're starting to get, you know, here on time, but Josh, you know, we talked about a little bit, but from your perspective, what are some of the most common mistakes athletic departments make when it comes to branding and facility, and what can the facility leaders in this room maybe take away from the Texas State project?
Yeah, I think we hit on quite a few of them already through this conversation. But the one thing I would mention is, as you go through your branding projects, any facility project, try to think of your graphics and branding as more than just decor, right? It's not just a sign on a wall. It's not just a pretty picture on a wall. Try to design your space with some intentionality of what the recruit is seeing at any given spot on their path during their visit. So we always like to imagine, you know, the recruit is coming up to the facility. Obviously, before they even get there, they're seeing what they see on social media. So we're trying to be an extension of that brand that they're already seeing digitally. So when they come to the space, you know, that's where their experience starts. So that's a lot of what the conversation is with the coaches, what the stories that are being told throughout individual spaces, and then design with some intentionality. That'd be my main one.
I want to take this time out here maybe to call anybody in the audience that maybe has gone through a project that, you know, that might be similar. With a show of hands, how many folks in here have worked with an architect on a project on their campus where they're at now or in a previous stop? Where were you at? What project did you have to work for?
Memorial University.
Cricket right there, Seth. Gotcha. That was not intentional there. So we've done some work at Lamar here in the last couple of years. So we're in there right now installing their football locker room. We've done the weight room, we've done the team room. Smaller projects, we stacked on top of one another and worked through. Not always an architect involved in there, but this latest one, yes. We had some. So who else? Yes. Are you contracted with an architect in those facilities right now and building out these are all new structures?
Yeah, these are brand new, board, but they look
All right. You know, big things that we run into, you know, is knowing what the budget is. You know, budgets are tight. You know, and like Travis alluded to earlier, you know, having the budget for graphics sometimes can be the afterthought. It's get the structure up and let's see what we got left. All right, we run into that a lot, and then how we can maybe work into that framework. You know, working with donors, you know, is unique at times. You know, Josh has got some experience too with donors on the Texas Tech project. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, so that was kind of on the flip side of how this project went. They were very involved on the front end of projects. So we were sitting in a room with architects, with the contractor, Cody Campbell and Dusty Womble were both on every call that we ever had. So it was interesting to get their perspective, and I think at times it can be a little bit overwhelming to, you know, see those faces and see those names on calls early in the process. But it's much better to have those conversations early, to get that feedback, especially when you're putting their name on the building. You want to make sure that what you're doing fits with what their vision is for the space. So sometimes there's harder conversations that come up, having, you know, more stakeholders involved. But through those conversations, that's where all the decisions are made, and really that truly gives you the best direction for the project.
Questions from the audience for Travis or Josh? Yes.
I might be a good point about using less player photos, with the portal era. You have some suggestions of, you know, alternatives, putting up on the wall that are still engaging, but maybe not all player centered.
So we have a couple different ways that we approach, you know, the new NIL era and player imagery. One of them obviously is putting them in systems and frames that are easily updatable. The other one is just from a design standpoint, as much as you can try to use images that don't show faces, keep that more evergreen. Whether you're putting we've done it quite a few times where you take a football player's, you know, helmet and put a face mask on him. Now you can't tell who the guy is. So there's different techniques that you can use to make things, you know, still impactful, but a little bit more evergreen in that sense. We're always looking for more opportunities to do that as well.
I would say for us, we probably don't have a picture in our building with a current student athlete. They just did some work for us here a week or two ago, and it was from our player from a year ago that signed with Indianapolis Colts. So all of our kind of historical things, bowl game 1, bowl game 2, beating Baylor, it's less about today's players and more about the program.
And I think the other challenge we ran into on this project specifically was they were making a transition to a new conference. So all the photos they had different conference patches on the jerseys. We had to scrub those a little bit and do some design work there. But you know, and I think we're still trying to fix a couple things that are in the building that were from before. So yeah, it's a challenge today. You know, with the portal era and then the conference realignment and where you're going to be, and they're a little more hesitant to do things. So
There's your recurring business.
current business, that's right. So, you know, we're okay with the realignment. So, anyone else have a question for anybody up here? Well, we really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today. I hope you find some value in that. If there's anything that we can be of value to you, that's what we're here to do. So, you know, reach out to us, Josh, myself, Miss Holly's here, Miss Danny's here as well from 49 Degrees. So, if there's anything that we can do to add a value to your campus and your department, we're here to do that. We appreciate Travis making